Welcome to my channel. Today we are kicking start one new series on my channel, and since you know that I'm doing my PhD, so I thought I'll teach one topic which is related to my PhD and something which I am working on. It is anaerobic digestion. Today we will see what is it and how we can use it to solve the problem of household waste. So let's begin with the video. First of all, what is anaerobic digestion? As there are two parts for this. First is anaerobic and second is digestion. So we'll talk about digestion part first, okay? If there is any organic material, it is anaerobically degraded to biogas. The process is called as anaerobic digestion. Biogas, as we all know, it has methane as the major component, but that is not the only thing that it has. Okay, so here we will see whenever any kind of organic matter means what? Anything which has biodegradable substance, okay? Because things like plastic and all, they cannot be degraded by microorganisms. Okay, so anything that has organic matter, when it is degraded or digested anaerobically, that means in the absence of oxygen or in very trace amounts of oxygen, it leads to formation of biogas, which can be used as fuel. Okay, now the components of biogas are divided into two. One is major components, then there are minor components. Okay, why are they called major? Because some of the components are present in large quantities. For example, methane gas. This is the primary gas that we are looking for. So methane gas is produced in high quantities as well as carbon dioxide. Compared to two, methane is produced in large quantities, and the percentage of this is around 50 to 70%. Okay, now the trace elements could be NH3, hydrogen sulfide. Okay, these could be the trace elements which could be present in, you cannot call them trace elements actually, but this is the minor component, and based on the kind of substrate, the percentage will vary. Okay, so our ultimate goal of anaerobic digestion is to get a biogas which is enriched with methane. Okay, but depending on what kind of substrate you use, not all substrates are ideal. That means not all substrates are waste can give rise to biogas which has more of methane. So depending on it, but roughly this is the proportion. Okay, and for anaerobic digestion to occur, the criteria should be two. One, there should be enough of organic matter present, as we have discussed it in the introduction itself. And second, redox potential has to be low. What is the meaning of redox potential low? The oxygen levels need to be low. Okay, if the oxygen levels are not low, then the methane gas will not be produced, because we will be seeing in steps of anaerobic digestion, the final step which is there is methanogenesis, and the bacteria which are present cannot tolerate oxygen that much. So we require either absence of oxygen, or if oxygen is there, it should be in trace amounts. And if the system is closed, automatically the oxygen will get initially utilized first, and then there would be anaerobic conditions. Okay, so this was all about the introduction part. Moving on to the next part, which is the first step in anaerobic digestion. Okay, moving on to the next part, which is hydrolysis. Now, this anaerobic digestion is a 4-step process. First step is hydrolysis, second is acidogenesis, also known as fermentation, third is acetogenesis, and fourth is methanogenesis. Okay, so first we will see what hydrolysis is. Now from organic matter to methane, okay, this conversion is a complicated conversion. For this to occur, first the bacteria which is producing methane needs to take in all the substrates. Then only it will be able to act on it and produce methane, okay, which is our ultimate goal. Now, in hydrolysis, whatever substrates are there, whether you are giving food or sewage, sludge or septage, that is broken down into its simpler forms. For example, carbohydrates would be broken down into sugars. Fats would be broken down into its constituent fatty acids. Proteins would be broken down into amino acids. This is done so that these simpler products can further be metabolized by microorganisms to give methane, which is our ultimate goal. Okay, so here I am taking the example of fat. Okay, triglycerol is a form of fat. It is broken down by lipases. Okay, lipases generally act on fats and it breaks it down into long chain fatty acids. Okay, so this is the first step of hydrolysis. This is the first step of anaerobic digestion, which is hydrolysis. Okay, second, any kind of reaction which takes a lot of time, it's called as a rate limiting reaction. Why? Because it limits the rate of all the further reactions. Like for example, if you take an example of 3 people walking, then the person who is walking the slowest will determine how fast they will reach their destination. If the condition is that all 3 must walk together. Okay, so in this case hydrolysis takes the longest time. It is the toughest of all the reactions, and that is why it is the slowest. Okay, so this hydrolysis reaction is a rate limiting reaction, and while designing the reactors also, the design is taken into consideration so that the hydrolysis rate becomes faster. Because if the next reaction we are going to see, that is the fastest reaction. So if this reaction is somehow managed, okay, to speed it up, or instead of making the microorganisms do the hydrolysis part, supply enzymes in external, so that this part can be speeded up. So in such cases, the biogas production or methane production will take place faster, and that is the ultimate aim of any biogas generation. Also, this process is sensitive to temperature. Okay, so while designing the reactor also, that needs to be taken into consideration. So now these end products, whether if it is fat, long chain fatty acids, if it is protein then amino acids, if it is carbohydrates then simple sugar, these are now ready to be metabolized by microorganisms so that methane can be produced. So this step actually occurs outside the body of outside the microorganisms. Moving on to the next part of anaerobic digestion, the second step. It's also called as acidogenesis or fermentation, and we will see why it is called like that. Now in the first step we have got all the simpler products. Now these simpler products enter the bacterial system, okay, and these are further broken down into more simpler products, and I will show with an example of sucrose. Okay, sucrose is derived from carbohydrates. Now it is further broken down by the bacteria into acetate, carbonate and hydrogen. So this is the reaction, how it occurs. So this could be, if it is if the end product was fatty acids in hydrolysis step, then it would be broken down into short chain fatty acids. If the end product was amino acids, then it would be broken down into ammonia, for example. Okay, so the products in hydrolysis stage, they are simpler forms of the polymeric polymers, but in acidogenesis they are further broken down, and this happens inside the bacterial system. So this is the reaction. The hydrolysis step was the slowest of all the steps, but acidogenesis steps is the fastest, and this you can see from here. Okay, the Gibbs free energy, I won't go into the details of what it is and how it works, but basically if the value is negative, that means the reaction moves in a forward direction. If the value is negative, if the value is positive, that means it is difficult for the reaction to occur spontaneously. So this is a very spontaneous reaction. You do not require to do anything much for this reaction to occur. As soon as the hydrolysis step, the bottleneck of the anaerobic digestion is hydrolysis. So once it gets done, this acidogenesis moves very fast. Now, the microorganisms which are responsible for this reaction, they may or may not be exclusively carrying out acidogenesis reaction. For example, microorganisms who are currently doing hydrolysis, they also could be capable of doing acidogenesis reaction. Okay, so hydrolytic as well as non-hydrolytic organisms could be capable of carrying out acidogenesis. Now if you have a look at this reaction, there is a lot of hydrogen which is produced. Okay, and if you know the definition of pH is nothing but your negative of log of hydrogen ion concentration present. So if the hydrogen ion concentration increases, there are chances of pH going down. Okay, and we will see how this affects. Now, the further steps of acidogenesis, third and fourth step, it effectively uses this hydrogen. Okay, so once the hydrogen gets eliminated, the product over here is acetate. Okay, and most of the 70% of the reaction methane which is formed is from acetate. So if you have acetate, it is a better situation. Okay, then if, say suppose the next reactions are not removing your hydrogen properly, then what will happen is that the hydrogen will get accumulated, the pH will go down, and more reduced products, okay, like butyrate and propionate will form. If the system is not overloaded, okay, then acetate is the main product. That's why we have to take care not to overload the reactor. Okay, if it is overloaded, then butyrate and propionate, these are the two substances that will occur. Okay, and we want more of acetate than butyrate and propionate. Okay, and why will they why butyrate and propionate will start forming is that this hydrogen is not getting removed properly. Okay, and the reason why it is not getting removed properly is the further reactions are not happening properly, or you can say this reaction is happening too fast because of overloading. So there is a lot of hydrogen which is present, and this hydrogen gets accumulated, lowers the pH, and more reduced products like butyrate and propionate will form. Obviously butyrate and propionate will have has more hydrogen in their structure than acetate, and we don't want that. So overloading of the reactor needs to be avoided. Let's have a look at one term which is called as SARI. Okay, what does saring mean? As I mentioned earlier, if the hydrogen ion concentration increases to a large extent, this can happen because of overloading of the reactor, because acidogenesis in itself is a fast reaction. Secondly, because of presence of toxic compounds also, the hydrogen ion concentration can increase. Okay, and if it increases, obviously there would be pH drop. There would be pH drop because the volatile fatty acid concentration will increase. Okay, here we have taken the example of a sucrose or sugar breaking down, but if it was fatty acid, then the result would be volatile fatty acids. So these volatile fatty acids will increase. Okay, obviously the pH will decrease, then the volatile fatty acids which need to get converted into acetate, that will not happen because of overloading and toxicity, and the whole effect would be the final step which we would be discussing later, that is methanogenesis. They are very sensitive, so all this toxicity will in turn affect methanogens. Okay, once methanogens get affected, the methane will not be produced. If the methane is not getting produced, that means the hydrogen ions which were earlier there, they are not getting scavenged properly, they are not getting removed properly, because these hydrogens in future will be utilized for production of methane. So this cycle continues and the reactor also collapses because of this, and it's called as souring of reactor. Too much of acidity, too much of acidification which occurs, thereby leading to toxicity of methanogens, having a toxic impact of methanogens, and then it becomes difficult to generate biogas which is rich in methane. So these were the first two steps of anaerobic digestion. I would explain the next two steps in next part of the video. I would also link the reference book which I have used for this for doing this video. Thank you.